my God, you guys, seriously. I'm still reeling from this, like shaking my head trying to wrap my brain around what actually went down. I swear, sometimes truth is stranger than fiction, and this is straight up wild. I mean, have you ever felt that gut-wrenching punch when someone you love, someone you'd literally give the shirt off your back for, just betrays you? Like to your core. Well, let me tell you that feeling. It's soul-crushing. And that's exactly where this story begins. Picture this, a cozy Tuesday morning, sun streaming into my kitchen, cup of tea in hand, feeling all peaceful and well, normal. And then, bam, my phone rings. And in that one single moment, my entire world, the one I thought I knew like the back of my hand, just shattered. It wasn't an accident, it wasn't a mistake. It was a cold, calculated move by someone I loved more than life itself. So, if you're ready to hear a story that's gonna make you gasp, maybe even shed a tear, and definitely make you wanna hug your own mom a little tighter, you're in the absolute right place. Hit that like button right now, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a quick "I'm ready" in the comments below, because trust me, you are not ready for this. This is about to get real fast. You know, life before all this mess, it was pretty darn good, actually. I was just living my best quiet life in my cozy little cottage, the one Harold and I poured every ounce of our hearts into. It's the kind of place where the sunlight just seems to know exactly how to stream in, especially in the kitchen, right there over my grandma's old oak table. Oh, that table. That table has literally seen everything. From my own kids wrestling with their algebra homework decades ago, to countless loud, messy, beautiful family dinners. Every morning, I'd be there, sitting, just sipping tea from my favorite bone china cup. You know the one. It was a wedding gift from way back in 1973. Can you believe it? That cup, that delicate little thing, had survived so much. 2 big cross-state moves, 3 rowdy grandkids, and 47 glorious years of marriage before my dear Harold passed on. Just thinking about it now, that cup, it didn't just hold tea, it held memories. So much of us, so much of our life together. After Harold, after he left us, life, it changed. Obviously. There was this quiet ache, you know. Like a piece of me was just missing. A void nothing could truly, completely fill. But I tried, I really did. I tried my darndest to find joy in the little, everyday things. In the garden that Harold and I had planted together 20 years ago. The daffodils, they'd burst into bloom every single spring. Their bright yellow faces a stark, beautiful contrast to the quiet gray that sometimes settled over my heart. And my daughter, Sarah, well, she was my world, you know, my flesh and blood. Even if our weekly phone calls had started to get shorter, more, I don't know, perfunctory lately. It felt like she was always rushing, always busy. But still, she was my girl, my only daughter. And then, back in January, during one of those calls, she actually suggested it herself. A vacation. To the majestic mountains of North Carolina. Just the 2 of us, Mom, she'd said. A real mother-daughter trip. Oh, my heart, you guys, it just absolutely soared. It had been years, literally years, since Sarah and I had really, truly spent quality time alone together, just us. I started picturing it all. Long, deep talks, quiet mornings sipping coffee on a porch swing, maybe even some easy hiking trails. It felt like a promise, a beautiful, long-awaited sign that she actually wanted to rebuild something. To connect again, just like old times, like before Harold died. This trip, it wasn't just a vacation. It was hope. It was a golden chance to reconnect, to share laughter, to make new memories after so much loss. I was beyond excited, honestly. Like a little kid waiting for Christmas morning, counting down the days. Little did I know, that peaceful morning, that beautiful hope, it was merely the calm before the storm. And my world, the one I thought I knew so well, was about to be rocked in a way I never, ever saw coming, completely shattering that cherished dream. So there I was, caught up in this beautiful little dream, right? Counting down the days to reconnect with my daughter, picturing mountain views and cozy chats. And then, voice drops slightly, it happened. It was a Tuesday morning, late April. The phone rang. I was sitting right there at Harold's table, sipping my tea, and that peaceful silence I loved so much. It just got brutally interrupted. "Mom," Sarah's voice came through the receiver, tight with what I initially mistook for disappointment. "I have some bad news about our trip." My heart literally sank, like a lead balloon. For 3 whole months, I had been looking forward to this. This planned vacation to the North Carolina mountains, the one Sarah herself had suggested back in January. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked, already dreading the answer, feeling that cold knot forming in my stomach. "I'm going to have to cancel our trip," she said, her voice a little too quick, a little too rehearsed. "Something's come up with Daniel's work, and we just can't get away right now." Daniel, my son-in-law, always with the crucial projects and immediate attention whenever it involved spending time with my side of the family. I tried to keep the hurt out of my voice. "Oh, Sarah, that's such a disappointment. I was really looking forward to spending time with you. We haven't had a proper vacation together since before your father died." "I know, Mom. I'm disappointed too," she replied, sounding almost too apologetic. "But you know how it is with Daniel's career. This promotion he's been working toward, he can't afford to take time off right now." I understood career pressures, truly I did. Harold and I made our sacrifices when we were building our life. But even as she spoke, something just didn't ring true. There was an evasiveness there, a hesitation. That familiar prickle of unease. My maternal instincts, after 43 years of being a mom, were screaming. It was that exact same evasive quality I remembered from when she was 8, chocolate smeared around her mouth, swearing she hadn't eaten the cookies I'd baked for the church bake sale. That tiny, almost imperceptible shift in her eyes, that slight rush in her words, as if she were racing to get the lie out before it could stick. "Well," I said, swallowing my disappointment, "perhaps we can reschedule for later in the summer." "Yes, absolutely. I'll call you when things settle down at work." After we hung up, I just sat there in my kitchen for a long, long time, staring out at the garden Harold and I had planted. The daffodils were just starting to bloom, their bright yellow faces a stark contrast to the gray mood that had settled over me. I told myself I was being silly. Plans got canceled all the time. Life was unpredictable. But that nagging feeling, it wouldn't go away. That little seed of doubt, that quiet whisper in my gut, it wouldn't let me go. And soon, it would blossom into a full-blown nightmare. You know that nagging feeling, the one that just won't let you be. That's exactly what I had. It was like a tiny little pebble in my shoe, annoying me, but I just kept walking, trying to convince myself I was being silly. Plans get canceled, life happens, especially for busy young people like Sarah. She had 2 teenagers, Emma and Jake, who kept her absolutely swamped with school stuff and their social lives. But as the days passed, something just kept nagging at me. Maybe it was the way Sarah had carefully avoided my eyes during our last video call, or how quickly she'd ended our conversation. Or maybe, just maybe, It was simply that undeniable intuition that comes from being a mother for 43 years. And then, the universe, in its infinite wisdom, decided to throw a wrench in Sarah's perfectly crafted lie. It was just the following Thursday. I was at the grocery store, minding my own business, carefully examining avocados in the produce section, trying to find that perfect one, when I heard a voice. Bella, Patricia Hensley, Sarah's old high school friend. She still lived in town, worked at the travel agency right there on Main Street, the very same one where I'd booked countless family vacations over the years. "How are you doing?" She called out, all bright and cheerful. "I heard you and Sarah are taking a trip to the mountains next week." "How exciting!" My hand, avocado halfway to my shopping basket, just froze. "I'm sorry, what?" I mumbled, utterly bewildered. Patricia's smile faltered just slightly. "The North Carolina trip. Sarah was in last week finalizing the details. She seemed so excited about it." My blood, I swear, turned to ice water in my veins. "Ice water? I think there might be some confusion, Patricia," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Our trip was canceled." Patricia looked genuinely puzzled. "Canceled?" "Oh no, Bella. She picked up the tickets on Monday, paid the final balance and everything." I carefully set the avocado down, my hands actually starting to tremble. "Perhaps you're thinking of someone else?" I asked, desperately hoping for a mistake, but she just shook her head. "No, I'm sure it was Sarah. Sarah Kaiton Morrison. She even mentioned how much she was looking forward to spending time away from the city. Said she needed a break from all the stress." I mumbled some polite excuse, left the store without buying a single thing, my mind just absolutely reeling with questions. A growing, sickening sense of betrayal was curling in my gut. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a straight-up, cold-hearted lie. And the truth, the truth was just beginning to claw its way to the surface. The gut punch, the uncomfortable truth. That evening, I finally picked up the phone and called Sarah. My mind was still buzzing, a million questions swirling, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let this slide. "Hi, Mom," she answered on the fourth ring, sounding, distracted. "What's up?" I didn't bother with small talk. No preamble, I just went straight for it. "I ran into Patricia Hensley today," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "She mentioned something interesting about our vacation." There was a pause, too long, too telling. "Mom, I can explain." Her voice had taken on that defensive tone I remembered from her teenage years, the one that always signaled trouble. "So there is something to explain," I shot back, a bitter taste in my mouth. Another pause. When she finally spoke again, it was an attempt at damage control. "Look, the trip isn't completely canceled. Daniel managed to work something out with his boss. We're going to be able to go after all." My heart hammered. "When?" I asked, a mix of furious hope and simmering suspicion. "Next week. Monday through Friday. And you didn't think to call me to let me know the trip was back on?" I asked, the words dripping with disbelief. "I was going to call you tonight, actually. That's why I was surprised when you called first. But I could hear it now, clear as a bell. That same evasive quality from the chocolate cookie incident, magnified by 40 years of practice. My daughter was lying to me, and she was doing it with the casual ease of someone who'd grown comfortable with deception. "So, when do we leave?" I pushed, wanting to corner her. The pause this time was so long, I honestly thought the call had dropped. "Mom, I'm here. The thing is, Daniel's mother is going with us instead." The words hit me, like a physical blow. I actually gasped. my free hand reaching out to steady myself against the kitchen counter. Vivian is going instead of me. It's not that simple, she stammered. Daniel's mother has been having some health issues, and her doctor suggested a change of scenery might help. This seemed like the perfect opportunity. And you couldn't have included both of us, I interrupted, incredulous. The cabin we booked only has 2 bedrooms. It would be too cramped, she replied, her voice firmer now, as if reciting a script. I closed my eyes, trying to process the sheer audacity of what I was hearing. My daughter had planned a vacation with me, canceled it with a lie about her husband's work, then decided to take her mother-in-law instead. All without having the courtesy to tell me the truth. Sarah, I said slowly, forcing each word out, do you realize what you've just told me? Mom, please don't make this into a big deal. We can reschedule our trip for later. You lied to me. I didn't lie, she protested, then fumbled exactly. You told me the trip was canceled because of Daniel's work. That was a lie. You've taken my place on this vacation and given it to Vivian Morrison, and you didn't have the decency to be honest about it. Mom, you're being dramatic. The word hung in the air between us like a stinging slap. How many times over the years had my concerns, my feelings, my legitimate grievances been dismissed as dramatic by Sarah? Sarah, I'm going to hang up now before I say something I can't take back, I warned, my voice shaking. Mom, wait. But I was already lowering the phone, my hand trembling with a mixture of hurt and a simmering rage I hadn't felt since Harold's funeral, when Sarah had spent more time networking with other mourners than comforting her grieving mother. I just sat there in my kitchen as darkness fell outside, staring at my reflection in the window. 70 years old, white hair neatly styled, wearing the cardigan Sarah had given me for Christmas back when she still pretended to care about my feelings. For 43 years, I'd been Sarah's mother. I'd changed her diapers, nursed her through chicken pox, helped her with algebra homework, listened to her cry over boys, walked her down the aisle at her wedding, and held her hand during the difficult birth of her first child. And this was how she repaid that devotion, with lies and casual cruelty, as if my feelings were inconsequential, as if I were nothing more than an obligation to be managed and dismissed. But Sarah had made one crucial mistake. She'd forgot that the woman who raised her wasn't just her mother. She was Bella Kaitan. And Bella Kaitan had never been the kind of woman to accept betrayal quietly. Oh no, not this Bella. As I sat there in the growing darkness, a plan, cold and precise, began to form in my mind. If my daughter wanted to play games with her mother's heart, then it was time for her to learn that some games have consequences she never saw coming. And trust me, I was just getting started. The investigator, unraveling the web. You know, the really heartbreaking part. I'd kept believing in her, kept making excuses for her behavior, even as the lies became more frequent and more hurtful. When she'd forgotten to invite me to Emma's graduation party, when she'd mixed up the dates for Jake's championship soccer game, when she'd been too busy to visit during my bout with pneumonia last winter, but somehow found time to post photos of herself at a spa weekend on social media. Harold had been gone for 3 years now, and in that time, Sarah's treatment of me had grown progressively worse. It was as if, without Harold there to witness her behavior, she felt free to show her true colors. But this vacation situation had stripped away all my illusions. This wasn't about being busy or stressed anymore. This was about choice. Sarah had actively chosen to exclude me, to lie to me, to hurt me. And she'd done it with such casual ease that I had to wonder how many other lies I'd swallowed over the years. I walked to my bedroom and opened the drawer where I kept all the family photos. There we were, Harold and me with baby Sarah, Sarah's first day of school, Christmas mornings, birthday parties, graduation ceremonies. A lifetime of memories, a catalog of love and devotion and sacrifice. Harold and I had given Sarah everything: a college education, a wedding down payment, help for her first house, countless hours of babysitting when Emma and Jake were small. We'd been the kind of parents who dropped everything when our child needed us, who put her happiness above our own comfort time and time again. And this was how she repaid us. With lies and exclusion and the kind of casual cruelty that can only come from someone who's never faced real consequences for their actions. But that was about to change. I put the photos away and walked to my desk where I kept my address book and important papers. If Sarah thought she could manipulate me like some doting old fool, she was about to learn otherwise. Bella Kaitan hadn't raised her daughter to be a liar and a manipulator. But if that's what Sarah had chosen to become, then it was time for her to meet the woman who taught her everything she knew about planning and persistence. The student was about to get a lesson from the master. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. But before I could plan my next move, I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. How deep did Sarah's deception go? How long had she been lying to me? I made myself a proper breakfast, something I'd been neglecting lately, and settled down with my laptop. Sarah thought I was a technologically challenged old woman, but she'd forgot that I'd worked as a bookkeeper for 30 years before retiring. Oh honey, I knew my way around computers and the internet better than she assumed. First, I checked Sarah's social media accounts. Her Facebook page was mostly family photos and inspirational quotes about motherhood and success. Nothing suspicious there. But her Instagram, oh, that told a different story. 3 weeks ago, she'd posted a photo of herself and Daniel at an upscale restaurant I'd never heard of. The caption read, "Date night planning our mountain getaway. Can't wait for some R&R." 2 weeks ago, a photo of vacation clothes laid out on her bed. Packing for adventure. 5 days of pure relaxation ahead. 1 week ago, a picture of travel guides and maps spread across her kitchen table. Final preparations for our mountain escape. So excited. Each post showed clear evidence that she'd been planning this trip for weeks, possibly months. This wasn't a last-minute decision to include Daniel's mother. This was a calculated replacement. But what really caught my attention? A comment from Vivian Morrison on the most recent post. "Can't wait to finally see those mountain views you've been promising me. Finally see those words." They sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't Vivian's first time hearing about this trip. She'd been promised those mountain views from the beginning. The web was starting to unravel, and I was about to tug on every single thread. My next call was to Patricia at the travel agency again. I needed to confirm my suspicions, to pull back every single layer of this deception, no matter how painful the truth might be. The calculated lie. A mother's betrayal. I grabbed my phone, my hands still a little shaky, and called Patricia at the travel agency again. "Bella, how lovely to hear from you again," Patricia said when she picked up, sounding a bit flustered. "I hope I didn't cause any confusion yesterday." "Not at all, Patricia," I replied, trying to keep my voice light, even as my stomach churned. "Actually, I was wondering if you could help me with something. When Sarah booked this trip, Did she mention who would be going with her? There was a moment of hesitation on Patricia's end. I probably shouldn't share client details, but since it's her family. She paused, then continued. She originally booked for 3 adults. Herself, Daniel, and someone she referred to as Daniel's mother. I remember because she specifically requested a room arrangement that would give the older guest her own space. My hands tightened around the phone. 3 adults. She never mentioned me at all. Not once. No, Bella, I'm sorry. I think I must have gotten confused yesterday when I mentioned you. Sarah definitely didn't book this trip for you and her. I thanked Patricia and hung up, my mind absolutely reeling. Sarah hadn't changed the plans. She'd never included me in the first place. The entire story about our mother-daughter vacation had been a complete fabrication. But why? Why create such an elaborate, hurtful lie? The answer, chillingly, came to me as I remembered a conversation we'd had back in January. "Mom, I've been thinking," Sarah had said during one of our weekly calls. "You seemed so down during the holidays. Maybe we should plan something fun together. A little trip, just the 2 of us." I had been thrilled. It had been years since Sarah and I had spent quality time alone together, and I'd interpreted her suggestion as a sign that she wanted to rebuild our relationship. "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart. What did you have in mind?" "I don't know yet. Let me look into some options and get back to you." She'd never gotten back to me. Instead, she'd called me weeks later with a story about the North Carolina mountains, presenting it as if it had been our plan all along. Now I understood. Sarah had never intended to take me anywhere. She just planted the idea of a trip to make me feel like she cared. Then, when she was ready to take her real vacation with Daniel and Vivian, she needed a way to explain why I wasn't included. Hence, the flimsy lie about Daniel's work conflicts and the canceled trip. But Sarah had made a crucial error. She'd underestimated her mother's intelligence and determination. She'd assumed I would accept her explanation and quietly fade back into the margins of her life, grateful for whatever crumbs of attention she chose to throw my way. What a laugh. I spent the rest of the morning making more phone calls, my fingers flying across the keypad, taking notes furiously. By lunch, I had a complete picture of Sarah's deception, and believe me, it was worse than I'd ever imagined. A quick call to Daniel's office, claiming to be confirming details for a delivery, revealed he'd been planning vacation time for months. There had never been any work conflict. A casual conversation with Emma, my sharp-as-a-tack 17-year-old granddaughter, revealed that she'd known about the mountain trip for weeks and was excited to have Grandma Vive share her travel photos when she got back. Grandma Vive. I'd asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Yeah," Emma replied. "She's always showing us pictures from her trips. She went to Europe last year and to California before that. Mom says she's the most adventurous person she knows." Each new revelation was like another knife twisting in my heart. Not only had Sarah excluded me from this vacation, but she'd been actively building up Vivian as the preferred grandmother, the interesting one, the one worth spending time with. The web of lies was not just wide, it was deeply, strategically woven, and I was about to cut every single thread. My investigation wasn't over. One more crucial call, one more piece of the puzzle, would soon expose the full, shocking truth of Sarah's calculated contempt. The calculated contempt, financial lies, and hidden motives. That afternoon, I made one more crucial call, to my old friend Margaret. She worked at the bank where Sarah and Daniel had their mortgage. "Bella, what a surprise." Margaret said when she recognized my voice. "How are you holding up?" "I'm doing well, Margaret," I said, trying to sound casual. "Listen, I'm calling because I'm concerned about Sarah and Daniel's finances. She's been asking me for help with some expenses, and I want to make sure they're not getting over their heads." It wasn't entirely a lie. Sarah hadn't asked for money recently, but she'd borrowed from me several times over the past few years, always with promises to pay me back that had never materialized. "Oh, I wouldn't worry about that," Margaret said, her voice reassuring. "They just paid off their credit cards last month, and their mortgage is in excellent standing. Daniel got a substantial bonus this year, and Sarah's been doing very well with her real estate business." Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Bam! Sarah wasn't struggling financially. She could afford this vacation without any sacrifice or difficulty. She'd simply chosen to spend her money on Vivian instead of me. The casual cruelty of it, the cold calculation, it was sickening. By evening, I had compiled a comprehensive dossier of Sarah's lies. The evidence was damning and undeniable. But more importantly, I had the beginnings of a plan. If Sarah wanted to play games, I was going to give her a game she'd never forget. She'd lied to me about work conflicts, financial struggles, and canceled plans. She'd manipulated me into believing she cared about our relationship while secretly planning to exclude me. But Sarah had forgotten something important about her mother. She'd forgotten that Bella Kaitan had been fighting battles and solving problems long before Sarah was born. She'd forgotten that I'd survived Harold's death, raised children through difficult times, and built a life based on honesty and integrity. Most importantly, she'd forgotten that I taught her everything she knew about planning and persistence. And if she thought she could outsmart the woman who trained her, she was about to receive a very painful education. I opened my laptop and began typing. If Sarah wanted to take a vacation with her mother-in-law, that was her right. But she was going to do it honestly, and she was going to face the consequences of her deception. The game was about to begin. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. But first, I needed allies. Assembling the team, the unlikely allies. Sunday morning brought unseasonably warm weather and crystal clear skies. The kind of day that made you believe anything was possible. I awoke before dawn, my mind sharp and focused on the task ahead. Sarah's vacation was set to begin the next day, which gave me exactly 24 hours to execute my plan. But first, I needed allies, and I knew exactly where to find them. My first call was to Emma, my granddaughter. At 17, she was old enough to understand family dynamics, but young enough to still have an idealistic sense of right and wrong. "Hi, Grandma Bella," she answered on the second ring, sounding surprised. "Mom said you might call to wish us bon voyage for tomorrow." "Actually, sweetheart, I'm calling because I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me," I said, my voice serious. "Do you know why I'm not going on this vacation with your mother?" There was a long pause. When Emma spoke again, her voice was smaller, more hesitant. "Mom said you decided not to come because mountain cabins make you uncomfortable. Something about the altitude and your age." Another lie. Another casual dismissal of my capabilities based on stereotypes about elderly people. "Emma, has your mother ever mentioned this trip being planned as something for her and me to do together?" I pressed. "No, Grandma. She's been planning this with Dad and Grandma Vive for months. She's been really excited about showing Grandma Vive the mountains because she's never been to that part of North Carolina." I felt that familiar stab of betrayal, but I kept my voice steady. I see. And did you know that your mother told me this trip was originally for the two of us, but she had to cancel because of your father's work? Another pause. Longer this time. Granddad took vacation days for this trip weeks ago. He's been looking forward to it. Smart girl. She was starting to put the pieces together. Emma, I'm going to ask you something, and you can say no if you're uncomfortable. But I think your mother has been lying to me about several things, and I'd like your help in setting the record straight. What kind of help? She asked. I explained my plan carefully, making sure Emma understood that this wasn't about hurting her mother, but about ensuring honesty in our family relationships. When I finished, there was a long silence. Grandma, Emma said, her voice filled with a surprising resolve, finally. I love Mom, but what she's doing to you isn't right. I've noticed how she treats you differently than she treats Grandma Vive, and it's always bothered me. You've noticed? I asked, a lump forming in my throat. Of course I've noticed. Grandma Vive gets invited to everything, gets asked for her opinion about everything, gets treated like she's this amazing person whose every word is wisdom. But you, Mom barely tolerates having you around. It's like she's embarrassed by you, and I've never understood why. Her words stung because they confirmed what I'd suspected but hadn't wanted to acknowledge. Will you help me? I asked. Yes, Emma said without hesitation. What do you need me to do? The pieces were all in motion. The first phase of my plan, subtle yet devastating, was about to be unleashed. Next up, my grandson Jake. He was more direct, with less patience for social niceties, and a fierce appreciation for straightforward honesty. He was exactly what I needed. The straight shooter, Jake's indignation. My second call was to Jake, my 15-year-old grandson. He was more direct than his sister, with less patience for social niceties and more appreciation for straightforward honesty. He was exactly what I needed right now. Grandma B, he answered enthusiastically. What's up, Jake? I need to ask you about your mother's vacation plans. Oh, the mountain thing with Grandma Morrison. Yeah, they're leaving tomorrow. Mom's been running around like crazy getting everything ready. Did you know she originally told me this trip was for her and me? I asked, bracing myself. What? No way, he blurted out, genuine shock in his voice. She's been planning this with Grandma Morrison forever. They've been looking at cabin rentals and talking about hiking trails for like 2 months. I explained the whole situation to Jake, who listened with increasing indignation. That's messed up, Grandma, he said, really messed up. Like, really messed up. Why would she lie about that? I don't know, Jake, I said, but I'm going to find out, and I'm going to need your help. Whatever you need. He shot back without hesitation. This is bogus, and Mom needs to know that people notice when she does stuff like this. My heart swelled with pride. My grandchildren, they understood. They saw through the facade. The loyal sister. Catherine's support. With the grandkids on board, I needed one more crucial ally. Someone who knew Sarah, knew our family dynamics, and would stand by me no matter what. My third call was to Harold's sister, my sister-in-law, Catherine. Catherine had always been fond of me, and she'd grown increasingly concerned about Sarah's behavior over the past few years. Bella, dear, how are you? Catherine's warm voice came through the phone like a hug. I'm well, Catherine, I replied, a wave of relief washing over me. But I need to tell you about something that's happened, and I need your advice. I laid out the entire situation for Catherine, from the original mother-daughter vacation story to the gut-wrenching discovery that I'd never been included in the real plans. When I finished, there was a long silence. That little Catherine caught herself before using language that would have made Harold blush. "Bella, I'm appalled. I know Sarah has her faults, but I never thought she'd stoop to outright lying to her own mother." "The lying is bad enough," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "but it's the casual cruelty that really hurts. She's been systematically excluding me from family events while elevating Vivian Morrison to some kind of saintly status." "I've noticed that too," Catherine said grimly. "At Harold's memorial service, Sarah spent more time chatting with Vivian about vacation plans than she did comforting you." I wanted to say something then, but I didn't want to cause a scene. "I wish you had," I sighed. "Maybe if someone had called her out earlier, it wouldn't have gotten to this point." "Well, it's not too late to call her out now," Catherine declared, her voice firm. "What did you have in mind?" I explained my plan to Catherine, who listened with growing satisfaction. "Bella Kaitan, you magnificent woman," she exclaimed. "Harold would be so proud of you right now. Count me in, whatever you need. The stage is set." The quiet preparation. By mid-afternoon, I had assembled my team and refined my strategy. The plan was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its potential impact. Sarah had built her deception on the assumption that no one would question her version of events. She was about to learn how wrong that assumption was. My final preparation was a trip to the local print shop, where I had several documents prepared. The young man behind the counter, barely older than Jake, looked at my materials with curiosity. "Interesting project, ma'am. Family history." "Something like that," I replied with a smile. "Family education." That evening, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea and Harold's photo on the table beside me. We'd been married for 44 years before his heart attack took him away from me. And in all that time, we'd prided ourselves on raising Sarah to be honest, compassionate, and responsible. "I don't know where we went wrong, Harold," I said to his picture, a whisper in the quiet room. "Maybe we were too lenient with her when she was young. Maybe we should have called her out on those early lies instead of hoping she'd outgrow them. But dwelling on past mistakes wouldn't solve present problems." Tomorrow, Sarah would leave for her vacation with Daniel and Vivian, confident that she'd successfully manipulated her mother into accepting exclusion and lies. She had no idea that her mother had spent the last 3 days uncovering every deception, building an airtight case, and preparing consequences that would make her think twice before lying again. I went to bed that night with a sense of anticipation I hadn't felt in years. Tomorrow was going to be very interesting indeed. The climax was building, the tension almost unbearable. The dawn of Sarah's supposed perfect vacation would be the dawn of her rude awakening. Monday morning dawned crisp and clear, perfect weather for a mountain vacation. Sarah, Daniel, and Vivian would be leaving North Carolina around 10:00 a.m., which gave me exactly 5 hours to execute the first phase of my plan. The game was on. The trap springs, the domino effect. Monday morning dawned crisp and clear, perfect weather for a mountain vacation. I was awake by 5:00 a.m., running through my mental checklist one final time. Sarah, Daniel, and Vivian would be leaving for North Carolina around 10:00 a.m., which gave me exactly 5 hours to execute the first phase of my plan. At 7:00 a.m., my phone rang. Sarah's name appeared on the caller ID. "Good morning, sweetheart," I answered, keeping my voice perfectly neutral. "Hi, Mom. I just wanted to call before we left to apologize again about the vacation. I know you were looking forward to it." The ease with which she lied still astounded me. Even now, hours before leaving with Vivian, she was maintaining the fiction that this had ever been my trip. That's very thoughtful of you, dear. Are you all packed? Just about. Daniel's loading the car now, and his mother should be here any minute. I hope you all have a wonderful time. The mountains are beautiful this time of year. Thanks, Mom. I'll call you when we get back and we'll start planning our trip. Okay. I'll look forward to it, I said, my voice as calm as still water. After she hung up, I sat for a moment, marveling at her ability to sound so sincere while weaving such an elaborate web of lies. But today, that web was going to collapse around her. At 8:00 a.m. sharp, Emma called. They just left Grandma. Mom was practically bouncing with excitement. She kept talking about how much Grandma Vive was going to love the cabin and the hiking trails. Perfect. Are you ready for your part? I asked. Already done. I posted the photo an hour ago with the caption you suggested. It's getting a lot of comments already. Phase 1 was in motion. Emma had posted a family photo from last Christmas to her Instagram account, one that showed our entire family gathered around the tree. Her caption read, "Thinking about family traditions and how they change. Some people get included, others get left behind. Funny how that works. Family traditions truth. It seemed innocent enough, but anyone who knew our family dynamics would understand the subtext." And Emma had a lot of followers, including many of Sarah's friends and neighbors. At 9:00 a.m., Jake sent me a text, "Package delivered." Grandma Morrison looked confused but took it inside. Jake had ridden his bike to Vivian's house and delivered an envelope addressed to her, claiming it was from Sarah. Inside was a printed copy of an email that supposedly came from Sarah's account, explaining that I had originally been invited on this trip, but had been uninvited due to personality conflicts, and that Vivian was essentially my replacement. The email was a fabrication, of course, but it was written in Sarah's typical style and included enough accurate details to seem authentic. Most importantly, it would plant seeds of doubt in Vivian's mind about the true nature of this vacation invitation. At 10:30 a.m., Catherine called. "It's done, Bella. I just finished speaking with Margaret Hensley, Patricia's sister. You remember her. She works at that boutique hotel where Sarah's real estate office holds their monthly networking lunches, right?" "What did you tell her?" I asked. I simply mentioned that I was concerned about Sarah's recent behavior and asked if she'd noticed anything unusual. Catherine chuckled. Margaret was very forthcoming. "Apparently, Sarah has been bragging to her colleagues for weeks about this exclusive mountain retreat she's taking with her favorite mother-in-law," Margaret's words, not mine. According to Margaret, Sarah has been quite vocal about how much more refined and interesting Vivian is compared to some people in the family. She's been painting herself as the devoted daughter-in-law who's finally able to give her husband's mother the appreciation she deserves. I felt that familiar stab of betrayal, but I pushed it aside. This was about justice now, not hurt feelings. Did Margaret seem surprised when you told her about Sarah's lies? Shocked would be a better word. She had no idea that you'd been told this was originally your trip. She thought you'd simply been excluded from the beginning, which she found odd but didn't question. And now she's asking questions. She mentioned that she has several mutual friends with Sarah who might be interested to know about this situation. By noon, the pieces were all in motion. Emma's social media post was generating buzz among the younger family members and friends. Jake's fake email had been delivered to Vivian, who would likely spend the entire drive to the mountains wondering about Sarah's true motivations. And Catherine had planted information with key members of Sarah's professional and social circles. But the real surprise, that was yet to come. At 2 p.m. my phone rang. It was Patricia from the travel agency, sounding utterly flustered. "Bella, I just got the strangest call from Sarah. She's at some gas station about 2 hours from the cabin, asking about adding another guest. She wanted to know if the cabin could accommodate a fourth person. When I told her the cabin only had 2 bedrooms and was booked solid for the week, she got very upset. She kept insisting that there had been some kind of miscommunication about the guest list. I smiled. Phase 2 was working perfectly. Did she say anything else? She asked me if you had called to inquire about joining the trip. I told her the truth, that you'd called to ask about the original booking arrangements. She got very quiet after that. I imagine she did. Bella, what's going on? Sarah sounded almost panicked. Let's just say that Sarah is learning that lies have a way of catching up with you. The big reveal, the uncomfortable truth bombs. At 4:00 p.m., the call I'd been waiting for finally came. Sarah's name flashed on my phone screen, but when I answered, her voice was nothing like the cheerful tone from that morning. Mom, her voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the undercurrent of panic. Of course, dear. What's on your mind? I asked, keeping my voice perfectly calm. Did you tell Emma that this vacation was originally supposed to be for you and me? I told Emma the truth about what you told me. Why? Because Emma posted something on social media that's causing confusion among the family. People are asking questions about why you're not here, about whether I lied to you about the trip being canceled. And Daniel's mother received some kind of email that, well, it doesn't matter what it said, but it's causing problems. What kind of problems? I asked, pushing her. There was a long pause. When Sarah spoke again, her voice was strained. Mom, Vivian is upset. She thinks I manipulated her into taking your place on this vacation. She's talking about cutting the trip short and going home. And is she right? Did you manipulate her into taking my place? Another pause. Longer this time. It's complicated. No, Sarah, it's really not, I stated. You either lied to me about this trip being canceled or you didn't. You either planned to include me from the beginning or you didn't. Which is it? Mom, can we please not do this now? I'm trying to salvage what's left of this vacation. Answer the question, Sarah. The silence stretched between us for nearly a minute. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. No. The trip was never for you and me. I planned it with Daniel and his mother from the beginning. So you lied to me. Yes, I lied to you. Because her voice broke slightly, because I knew you'd be hurt if I told you the truth. I thought it would be easier if you believed the trip had been canceled rather than knowing you were never invited. Easier for whom, Sarah? For me or for you? For both of us, she insisted. I see. And the story about Daniel's work conflicts. That was a lie too. And your promise to reschedule a trip for us later. I don't know, maybe, probably not. Each admission was like pulling teeth, but I could hear her defenses crumbling. The web of lies she'd constructed was unraveling, and she was finally being forced to confront the truth of what she'd done. Sarah, I want you to listen to me very carefully, I said, my voice firm. You're 43 years old, and you lied to your mother about a vacation so you could take your mother-in-law instead. You created an elaborate fiction about canceled plans and work conflicts rather than simply being honest about your preferences. Mom, I'm not finished. You've been systematically excluding me from family events while elevating Vivian to a status I'll apparently never achieve. You've treated me like an inconvenience to be managed rather than a person whose feelings matter. That's not true, is it? When was the last time you asked for my opinion about anything important? When was the last time you included me in a family decision or a celebration without me having to invite myself? Silence. You want to know what's really sad about this, Sarah? If you'd simply told me the truth from the beginning, that you wanted to take a vacation with Daniel and his mother, I would have been disappointed, but I would have understood. Instead, you chose to lie, to manipulate, and to treat me like a fool. Mom, please, can we talk about this when I get back? Vivian is already threatening to leave, and if this vacation falls apart completely. That's not my problem, Sarah. That's the consequence of your choices. What do you mean? I took a deep breath, preparing for the moment I'd been building toward all week. I mean that actions have consequences. You've spent years treating me as less important than Daniel's mother, and now you're going to live with the results of that choice. I don't understand. You will. Enjoy the rest of your vacation, dear. Assuming Vivian doesn't decide to go home early because she's uncomfortable about being used as a replacement for your mother. I hung up before she could respond. I remembered a day when Sarah was 10 years old and had been caught cheating on a spelling test. Her teacher, Mrs. Robinson, had called to discuss the incident, and Sarah had denied everything despite overwhelming evidence. Sarah, I'd said that evening, lying about what you did wrong doesn't make it go away. It just makes it worse. But if I tell the truth, I'll get in trouble. She'd protested. You're already in trouble, sweetheart. The question is whether you're going to make it worse by continuing to lie or make it better by taking responsibility. She'd eventually confessed, apologized to her teacher, and retaken the test honestly. I'd thought she'd learned her lesson. Apparently, I'd been wrong. But the lesson wasn't over yet. Phase 3 of my plan was just beginning. The mountain peak had been scaled, the truth unveiled. But what happens after the storm breaks? That's where the real work and the real healing truly begins. The rest of Monday passed in relative quiet, but I knew the storm was just beginning. Sarah's panicked phone call had confirmed that my initial strategy was working. The carefully planted seeds of truth were sprouting in exactly the places where they would cause maximum discomfort. And Tuesday morning would bring the first wave of consequences. The first wave, consequences crash in. The rest of Monday passed in relative quiet, but I knew, deep down, that the storm was just beginning. Sarah's panicked phone call had confirmed that my initial strategy was working like a charm. The carefully planted seeds of truth were sprouting in exactly the places where they would cause maximum discomfort. And Tuesday morning brought the first wave of consequences crashing down. At 8:00 a.m. My phone rang. It was Vivian Morrison herself. Her voice, usually so composed, was shaky with emotion. Bella, I hope you don't mind me calling directly. I got your number from the church directory. Of course not, Vivian. How can I help you? I asked, my heart thumping a little faster. I need to ask you about this vacation, she said, cutting right to the chase. Sarah has been evasive about certain details, and I'm starting to piece together a picture that's very disturbing. I waited, letting her fill the silence. Was this trip originally planned for you and Sarah? Sarah told me it was. She called me in January to suggest we take a mother-daughter vacation. Then, in April, she told me it had been canceled due to Daniel's work conflicts. Dear God, Vivian's voice was barely a whisper, I had no idea. Sarah told me this had been planned for months as a family vacation that would give Daniel and me a chance to bond with his mother-in-law. She made it sound like it was your idea that I be included. Another lie, layer upon layer of deception, each one designed to manipulate a different person for Sarah's convenience. Vivian, I want you to know that I don't hold you responsible for any of this, I said, genuinely. You were lied to just as much as I was. But I should have questioned it, she sighed, a hint of self-reproach in her tone. When Sarah first suggested this trip, something felt off. She was almost too enthusiastic about including me, like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. What do you mean? She kept saying things like, "You're so much more adventurous than most people your age, and it's refreshing to spend time with someone who appreciates fine experiences." It felt like she was making comparisons to someone, but I didn't realize. She was comparing you to me, I finished softly. Yes, and now I understand why she was so insistent that this cabin only had 2 bedrooms. She kept saying it would be cozy and intimate, perfect for bonding. But there's a 3rd bedroom here, Bella. A beautiful room with its own bathroom that's sitting completely empty. The scope of Sarah's lies was breathtaking. She'd lied to me about the trip being canceled, lied to Vivian about it being a family bonding experience, and even lied about the cabin's capacity to justify excluding me. Vivian, what are you going to do? I'm going home today, she stated, her voice firm. I can't stay here knowing that my presence represents your exclusion. It's not right, and it's not the kind of person I want to be. You don't have to do that. This isn't your fault. Maybe not, but staying would make me complicit in Sarah's deception. I won't be party to treating you this way. After Vivian hung up, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction that the truth was finally coming to light, but sadness that it had taken such drastic measures to achieve it. The ripples of truth were spreading fast, far beyond the family. At 10:00 a.m., Emma called. Grandma, my Instagram post is blowing up. Aunt Catherine shared it, and now all the older relatives are commenting and asking questions. Mom's friends are starting to put the pieces together too. What kind of comments? Well, Cousin Michelle asked why you weren't included in family vacations anymore. Aunt Susan wanted to know if everything was okay between you and Mom. And Mrs. Patterson from church said she'd been wondering why you seemed so sad lately during services. And Sarah's friends. That's where it gets interesting. Mom's real estate friend Jennifer commented asking if this was about the mountain trip with the in-laws that Mom had been bragging about at their last networking lunch. Apparently, Mom had made it sound like she was finally able to appreciate Daniel's mother properly, without having to manage other family dynamics. Each revelation was another nail in the coffin of Sarah's carefully constructed image. For years, she'd been portraying herself as the dutiful daughter-in-law, while simultaneously depicting me as some kind of burden that required management. The consequences were truly starting to hit, not just for Sarah, but for her carefully curated reputation. The calls kept coming, each one adding another layer to the systemic betrayal Sarah had inflicted, not just on me, but on how I was perceived by our entire community. The whispers spread. Reputation under attack. At noon, Catherine called with an update from her network of friends and church acquaintances. Bella, the word is spreading like wildfire. I had lunch with the ladies from the Historical Society, and they're all buzzing about Sarah's behavior. Oh, really? What are they saying? I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. Apparently, she's been making subtle comments about your declining social energy and preference for quiet activities for months. Declining social energy, she'd called it. She's been painting you as someone who's becoming less interested in social activities and family gatherings. Meanwhile, she's been praising Vivian's youthful spirit and adventurous nature. She's essentially been building a narrative that justifies excluding you while elevating Vivian. The manipulation, I realized, went deeper than I had even imagined. It gets worse, Catherine continued, her voice grim. Margaret Hensley told me that Sarah has been gently suggesting to people that you might be developing some mild cognitive issues. Nothing dramatic, just occasional forgetfulness and confusion that makes including you in complex plans challenging. I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't just about vacation lies. Sarah had been systematically undermining my reputation in the community, creating a false narrative that would justify increasingly callous treatment. What kind of cognitive issues? I whispered. The usual stereotypes about elderly people, Catherine explained. Forgetting appointments, getting confused about dates and times, needing extra help with technology. She's been very subtle about it, always framing it as concern for your well-being rather than criticism. But it's all lies. Of course, it's all lies. Anyone who actually spends time with you knows you're sharp as a tack. But most of these people don't see you regularly, so they have no way to verify Sarah's claims. How many people has she told these lies to? I asked, my voice barely steady. Based on what I've learned today, dozens, maybe more. She's been very busy building her narrative. The sheer scale of her deception was staggering. The fallout widens, Daniel's realization. At 2 p.m. my phone rang again. This time it was Daniel calling from the mountain cabin. His voice was strained and deeply uncomfortable. Bella, I owe you an apology, a huge apology. I had no idea that Sarah had told you this trip was originally for you and her. What did you think the situation was? I asked, needing to hear his version. Honestly, I thought you decided not to come because mountain vacations weren't your thing, he confessed. Sarah said you preferred staying close to home and that you'd suggested she invite my mother instead. Another lie, another layer of manipulation designed to make everyone believe that my exclusion was my own choice. Daniel, has Sarah ever discussed my supposed cognitive decline with you? I asked, steeling myself for the answer. There was a long pause. How did you? Yes, he admitted. She's mentioned being concerned about your memory and some confusion about dates and appointments. She said she was worried about your ability to handle travel and new environments. And you believed her. I had no reason not to believe her. She's your daughter. I assumed she would know best about your capabilities. When was the last time you actually spent more than a few minutes in conversation with me, Daniel? I challenged him gently. Another pause. Longer this time. It's been a while. Sarah usually handles the communications with your side of the family. So you based your opinion of my mental state on Sarah's reports rather than your own observations. Yes, and now I'm realizing what a mistake that was. Bella, you sound completely lucid and sharp. There's nothing wrong with your cognitive abilities, is there? Nothing whatsoever, I replied, a wave of weariness washing over me. Jesus Christ. What has Sarah been doing? She's been systematically isolating me from the family while building a false narrative that justifies that isolation. I explained, the words heavy. She's been lying to everyone, me, you, your mother, the kids, her friends, our church community. I don't understand why she would do that, Daniel muttered. Neither do I, Daniel, but I intend to find out. The teenage rebellion. Kids see the truth. At 4:00 p.m., Jake called with an update from the teenage front. Grandma, this is getting crazy. Emma's post has been shared like 50 times, and now all our cousins and school friends are asking questions. Some of Mom's friends are asking their parents about why you're never included in family stuff anymore. How is Sarah handling all this attention? I asked, a grim satisfaction forming. She's freaking out. She called Emma an hour ago and basically demanded that she delete the post. When Emma refused, Mom threatened to take away her car privileges. And what did Emma say? She told Mom that maybe if she hadn't lied to her grandmother, there wouldn't be anything embarrassing to post about. I couldn't help but smile. My grandchildren had inherited some of their great-grandfather Harold's sense of justice. Jake, I need you to do something for me, I said. I want you to ask your friends to share Emma's post with their parents. The more people who see it, the better. Already on it, Grandma. This is like watching karma in real time. The consequences were snowballing, hitting Sarah from every angle. And the climax of her reckoning was far from over. The pressure was mounting, cornering Sarah in her web of deceit. The stage was set for the final, brutal confrontation where she would have no choice but to face the full, unvarnished truth. The final showdown, no more hiding. At 6:00 p.m., Sarah called. Her voice was barely controlled fury mixed with raw desperation. What did you do? She demanded without preamble. I told the truth, Sarah, I replied calmly, every word weighted. Something you seem to have forgotten how to do. The truth, she screeched, her voice cracking. You've destroyed my vacation, turned my children against me, and made me look like a monster to everyone I know. I didn't make you look like anything, dear, I stated, my voice firm. I simply stopped covering for your lies. What lies? I was trying to protect your feelings by telling people I have cognitive problems. By suggesting I'm too confused and forgetful to handle travel. By building a narrative that paints me as a burden while elevating Vivian to saint status. Silence. Heavy, thick silence. Yes, Sarah, I said, my voice cutting through the quiet. I know about all of it. Every lie you've told, every person you've manipulated, every false story you've spread about my supposed decline. Did you really think you could systematically destroy my reputation without anyone noticing? I never said you had cognitive problems. She insisted, her voice rising. Daniel says otherwise. So do several other people. You've been very busy building your case for why excluding me is actually kindness. I was trying to make it easier for everyone. Easier for you. You mean it's easier to exclude me if everyone believes I'm becoming incompetent. It's easier to replace me with Vivian if everyone believes she's more interesting and capable. That's not, I don't, she stammered, flailing. Sarah, you lied to me, to your husband, to your mother-in-law, to your children, and to half the community. I pressed on, relentless. You've been playing a long game designed to push me out of the family while making it look like it's for my own good. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did hurt me, repeatedly, systematically. And the worst part is that you've been lying to yourself about it, pretending that your cruelty is actually kindness. What do you want from me? She cried, her voice cracking. I want the truth, all of it. Why you've been working so hard to exclude me from your life. Why you've been lying about my mental state. Why you've decided that Vivian Morrison is a better mother figure than the woman who actually raised you. I can't. I can't do this over the phone. Then come home, Sarah. Cut your vacation short and come face the consequences of your actions. Vivian already left, didn't she? She drove home this afternoon. She said she couldn't stay, knowing how you treated me. Smart woman. So the vacation is ruined anyway. Daniel and I are packing up tonight. Good, because we're going to have a conversation that's long overdue. And this time, Sarah, you're going to tell me the truth. The stage was set. The daughter who had woven a web of lies was about to be caught in her own trap, facing the woman she had so casually dismissed. Wednesday afternoon found me sitting in my living room, waiting for the sound of Sarah's car in the driveway. She'd called that morning to say she and Daniel would be arriving around 4:00 p.m. Their mountain vacation cut short by the avalanche of consequences that had followed her lies. I'd spent the morning preparing for this confrontation, the way a general prepares for battle. I had my documentation organized, my questions prepared, and my resolve hardened by 3 days of revelations about the depth of my daughter's deception. At exactly 4:15, I heard the car doors slam outside. Through my window, I watched Sarah and Daniel approach my front door. Sarah's face was pale and drawn. Her usual composed demeanor was replaced by obvious anxiety. Daniel looked uncomfortable but determined. Apparently, the drive home had involved some difficult conversations. They knocked, rather than using the key I'd given Sarah years ago. Interesting. "Hello, Mother," Sarah said when I opened the door. The formal address wasn't lost on me. She only called me Mother when she was trying to create emotional distance. "Sarah, Daniel, please come in." We settled in my living room. Sarah perched nervously on the edge of the sofa while Daniel sat beside her, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. I took my usual chair across from them, the photo of Harold on the side table seeming to watch over us all. "I suppose you're satisfied," Sarah began, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. "You've ruined our vacation, humiliated me in front of the entire community, and turned my children against me." "I haven't done anything except tell the truth," I replied, my voice steady. "If that ruined your vacation and humiliated you, perhaps you should examine your own actions." "My actions? I tried to spare your feelings by lying to me, by creating false narratives about my mental state, by systematically excluding me from family events while building up Vivian as my replacement." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "Bella," he said, "Sarah told me about your conversation yesterday. I had no idea about the extent of the misunderstandings. They weren't misunderstandings, Daniel. They were deliberate lies, told to multiple people over an extended period of time. And I think it's time Sarah explained why." Sarah's composure finally cracked. "Fine, you want the truth? Here's the truth. Yes, I lied about the vacation. Yes, I planned it with Vivian from the beginning. Yes, I told people you were having memory issues. Are you happy now? Why?" I asked, my voice calm, almost a whisper, but it cut through her anger. "Why? Why did you do all of that? Why go to such elaborate lengths to exclude me and lie about it?" Sarah stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. When she turned back to face me, her eyes were bright with unshed tears and years of suppressed resentment. "Because you're embarrassing," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "Because every time I include you in anything, you make me look bad. Because Vivian is elegant and sophisticated, and you're. And what, Sarah?" I prompted, my voice as cold as ice. "You're provincial, you're unsophisticated. You embarrass me in front of my friends with your outdated clothes and your simple opinions, and your complete lack of understanding about how the world works now." The words hit me like physical blows, but I forced myself to remain calm. Go on, when I take Vivian places, people are impressed. She's traveled the world. She has interesting stories. She understands fine dining and culture and current events. When I take you places, people feel sorry for me for having to include my elderly mother who doesn't fit in anywhere. And so you decided to replace me. I decided to spare us both the embarrassment. Daniel looked horrified. Sarah, what are you saying? I'm saying what everyone already knows but is too polite to mention. Sarah snapped. That mom is from a different generation, a different social class, a different world. That including her in sophisticated social situations is awkward for everyone involved. Sophisticated social situations. I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Like a family vacation to a mountain cabin. Like anywhere outside of this little house and your narrow circle of elderly friends. I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. This wasn't just about lies or vacation plans. This was about fundamental contempt. Contempt for who I was, where I came from, and what I represented in Sarah's carefully curated life. I see, I said quietly. And the lies about my cognitive decline. Sarah had the grace to look ashamed, but she didn't deny it. People ask questions when an elderly parent is excluded from family activities. It's easier if they think there are limitations that make inclusion impractical. So you created those limitations. I exaggerated some minor forgetfulness and confusion. Everyone that age has some memory issues. I don't have memory issues, Sarah. I don't have confusion. I don't have any of the problems you've been describing to people. You forget things sometimes. Everyone forgets things sometimes. That doesn't constitute cognitive decline. Daniel cleared his throat. Sarah, when you told me about Bella's memory problems, you made it sound much more serious than minor forgetfulness. I may have emphasized certain incidents. What incidents? I asked. Like the time you called me 3 times in one day asking about Emma's graduation date. I called once to confirm the time, once to ask about parking, and once to check if you needed me to bring anything. 3 separate questions, 3 separate calls. But you could have asked all those questions in one call, and from that you concluded I was having memory problems. Among other things. What other things? Sarah sat back down, her anger deflating into sullen defensiveness. You don't understand modern technology. You dress like it's still 1985. You don't know anything about current events or culture. You live in the past. So you decided to erase me from the present. I decided to create situations where we could all be comfortable. Comfortable for whom? Not for me, certainly. Not for your children, who have been watching you treat their grandmother like an embarrassment. Not for Daniel, who's been making judgments about my mental state based on your lies. It wasn't supposed to go this far, Sarah said quietly. It started small. I just avoided including you in things that might be awkward, but then people would ask questions, and I'd have to explain, and the explanations got more elaborate. More dishonest, you mean? I never meant to hurt you. But you did hurt me, Sarah. Not just with the lies, but with the clear message that you're ashamed of the woman who raised you. We sat in silence for several minutes. Daniel looked like he wanted to disappear into the furniture. Sarah stared at her hands, apparently fascinated by her manicure. Finally, Sarah looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. I don't know how to fix this. Start with the truth, all of it. No more lies, no more manipulations. No more false narratives about my capabilities or limitations. And then what? Pretend this never happened. No, Sarah. Then we figure out whether we can build a relationship based on honesty instead of the lies and contempt that have been driving your behavior. Daniel finally spoke up. Sarah, you need to understand how this looks from the outside. You've been systematically isolating your mother while telling people she's becoming incompetent. That's not just lying, it's a form of abuse. Abuse. Sarah looked genuinely shocked. I would never abuse my mother. Then what would you call creating false narratives about her mental state to justify excluding her from family activities? Daniel asked, his voice firm. What would you call lying to her about vacation plans while taking someone else in her place? I was trying to protect everyone's feelings. You were trying to manage people's perceptions so you could exclude your mother without being seen as the bad guy, Daniel said, his gaze steady on Sarah. And in the process, you've damaged her reputation and isolated her from her own family. I looked at my son-in-law with new respect. He was finally seeing the situation clearly. Sarah, I said, I need you to answer one question honestly. Do you want a relationship with me at all, or would you prefer that I simply fade into the background of your life completely? Of course I want a relationship with you. Then it needs to be based on truth. No more lies about my capabilities. No more exclusions justified by false narratives. No more replacing me with people you find more suitable. What if I genuinely think an event or activity isn't appropriate for you? Then you discuss it with me honestly. You don't lie to me about it being canceled or make up stories about my mental decline. And if I'm uncomfortable including you in certain social situations, I leaned forward, looking directly into her eyes. Then you examine why you're uncomfortable with the woman who raised you. And you decide whether your discomfort is more important than your mother's dignity. Sarah was crying now, quiet tears streaming down her cheeks. I don't know how to undo what I've done. You start by taking responsibility for it. You stop making excuses and start making amends. How? That's for you to figure out, Sarah. But I'll tell you this much. The next time you exclude me from something, you'd better have a damn good reason that has nothing to do with my alleged cognitive decline or your embarrassment about my provincial nature. Daniel reached over and took Sarah's hand. We'll figure it out, he said quietly. But Sarah, you have to understand that this can't happen again. What you've done is serious, and it's going to take time to rebuild trust. Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes. I know, I don't know where to start. Start with the truth, I repeated. And start with respect. I may not be as sophisticated as Vivian Morrison, but I'm your mother, and I deserve better than lies and manipulation. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered. I'm so sorry. I studied her face, looking for signs of genuine remorse versus mere regret at being caught. What I saw was a woman who had finally been forced to confront the ugliness of her own behavior, and who was genuinely shocked by what that confrontation had revealed. I know you are, Sarah. The question is whether you're sorry enough to change. The storm had broken, the truth had been spoken, but the journey to healing was only just beginning. The path ahead would be long, winding, and filled with tests of true remorse. The immediate aftermath of our confrontation was a period of tense quiet, but I knew the ripples would soon spread far beyond the walls of my living room. Sarah's public reckoning was just around the corner. The public reckoning, rumors and revelations. The week following our confrontation was a period of careful observation and tentative steps toward rebuilding. Sarah had left my house that Wednesday afternoon with red eyes and a promise to make things right. But I'd learned not to trust promises alone. I was waiting to see actions. The first sign of change came Friday morning when my phone rang. "Mom," Sarah's voice was hesitant, uncertain. "I was wondering if you'd like to have lunch today." Just the two of us. Nothing fancy, just talking. It was the first time in over a year that Sarah had initiated a social invitation that wasn't tied to a family obligation or holiday. "I'd like that," I said carefully. "Where did you have in mind?" "Actually, I was thinking I could pick up sandwiches from that deli you like and bring them to your house if that's okay with you." Another small but significant gesture. Sarah rarely came to my house unless absolutely necessary, and she never voluntarily brought food to share. When she arrived at noon, she looked tired but determined. She carried a bag from Morrison's Deli, the local place where Harold and I used to eat lunch every Saturday for 15 years. "I got your usual," she said, unpacking turkey and Swiss with mustard on rye bread. "And I brought some of their potato salad. I remember you always liked it." We ate in my kitchen, the same room where I'd fielded her lying phone call about the canceled vacation just 2 weeks earlier. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "I've been thinking about what you said," Sarah began, picking at her sandwich, "about examining why I was uncomfortable including you in social situations. And I think I've been ashamed of my own background, my own upbringing, and taking that shame out on you." I waited for her to continue. "When I married Daniel and started moving in his social circles, I felt like I had to prove I belonged there," she explained. "That I was sophisticated enough, cultured enough, successful enough to fit in with his family and friends. And you saw me as evidence to the contrary," I asked, my voice soft. "I saw you as a reminder of where I came from. The small town, the modest house, the simple life, everything I was trying to distance myself from." It was an honest answer, but it stung nonetheless. "I see. I know how that sounds," Sarah said quickly. "I know it's awful, but I'm trying to be honest with you. Honesty is a good start, but Sarah, there's nothing shameful about where you came from. Your father and I worked hard to give you opportunities, but we never expected you to be ashamed of us in return. I know that now. I'm starting to understand that the problem isn't with you. It's with me." Over the next hour, we had the most honest conversation we'd shared in years. Sarah told me about the pressure she felt to maintain a certain image in her professional and social circles, about her fear that people would judge her based on her family background, about how she'd gradually convinced herself that excluding me was protecting both of us from embarrassment. "The thing is," she said, "I've been living with this constant anxiety about being found out as someone who doesn't really belong in these elevated social circles. And instead of dealing with that anxiety, I decided the solution was to hide the parts of my life that didn't fit the image I was trying to project, including your mother." "Including my mother," I repeated, "and I convinced myself it was for your own good, that you'd be uncomfortable in those situations anyway. Did you ever think to ask me?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "No. I never asked what you wanted. I just decided what was best for everyone. It was progress, but I needed to know more." "Sarah, what about the lies you told people about my mental state?" "That wasn't about protecting me from embarrassment. That was about creating justification for exclusion." Her face flushed with shame. That started almost by accident. "The first time someone asked why you weren't at a family event, I panicked and said you'd been having some confusion about dates. It seemed easier than admitting I hadn't invited you. And then it snowballed. Each lie required another lie to support it. Before I knew it, I'd created this elaborate fiction about your declining capabilities. And the worst part is, I started to believe some of it myself. What do you mean? I asked, a chill running down my spine. I mean, I started interpreting everything you did through the lens of the lies I told. If you called to ask a question, I saw it as evidence of confusion instead of normal communication. If you took a moment to remember something, I saw it as memory problems instead of normal human behavior. This revelation was perhaps the most disturbing of all. Sarah hadn't just been lying to others. She'd been gaslighting herself, rewriting reality to match her fabrications. Sarah, do you realize how dangerous that kind of thinking is? You were essentially erasing my actual capabilities and replacing them with fictional limitations. I know how wrong it was, and I'm trying to figure out how to undo the damage. What have you told people since you got back from the mountains? I've started making some calls. I told Daniel's mother the truth about the vacation lies. I called a few of my close friends and admitted I had exaggerated concerns about your mental state. It's humbling. How are people responding? Mixed reactions. Some are disappointed in me. Others are confused about why I felt the need to lie in the first place. A few have admitted they never really believed the stories about your cognitive decline. Anyway, that last part was oddly comforting. At least some people had seen through her deceptions. What about Vivian? How is she handling all this? Sarah's face fell. She's hurt, deeply hurt. She feels like I used her to hurt you. And she's right, I did use her. I built her up as everything you supposedly weren't. And I put her in the position of unknowingly participating in your exclusion. Have you apologized to her? I tried. She's not ready to talk to me yet. She said she needs time to process the fact that our entire friendship was built on lies about you. Friendship. I've been cultivating a relationship with Vivian for the past 2 years. Sarah confessed, her voice barely a whisper. Ever since Daniel started talking about wanting to travel more with his parents, I thought if I could become close to her, it would solve the problem of having 2 mothers who required attention by replacing one with the other. Yes. And now I've probably destroyed my relationship with both of you. The truth, though painful, was finally out in the open. But true healing would require more than just admissions. It would demand tangible actions and a complete dismantling of the old patterns. I studied my daughter's face. She looked genuinely remorseful, but I'd been fooled by her apparent sincerity before. This time, I was going to reserve judgment until I saw sustained changes in behavior. Because promises, as I well knew, were just words unless backed by action. Conditions for forgiveness. Actions speak louder. I studied my daughter's face. She looked genuinely remorseful, but I'd been fooled by her apparent sincerity before. This time, I was going to reserve judgment until I saw sustained changes in behavior. Because promises, as I well knew, were just words unless backed by action. Sarah, I appreciate your honesty today, but you understand that this is going to take time to rebuild, don't you? I asked, my voice firm. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal overnight. I understand, she whispered. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes. Good, because I have some conditions. She looked nervous. What kind of conditions? First, no more lies about anything, I stated, my gaze unwavering. If you don't want to include me in something, you tell me honestly. If you're uncomfortable with a situation, you discuss it with me directly instead of creating elaborate justifications. Okay, she nodded, reluctantly. Second, you make a public correction about my mental state. I don't care how you do it, but the people you've lied to need to hear the truth. That will be embarrassing." "Not as embarrassing as what you put me through," I retorted, a sharp edge to my voice. She nodded again, her jaw tight. "Okay, what else? Third, you include me in family decisions and events at the same level you include Vivian. If she gets an opinion about family matters, so do I. If she gets invited to celebrations, so do I. And if there are conflicts, if you and Vivian don't get along or have different opinions, then you deal with it like an adult instead of choosing one of us over the other based on who's more socially advantageous." Sarah was quiet for several minutes, clearly processing the weight of what I was asking. Finally, she looked up at me with what appeared to be genuine resolve. "I agree to your conditions, all of them." "But Mom," she hesitated, "can I ask you something? What, do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? Really forgive me, not just tolerate me?" I considered the question carefully. The hurt was still fresh, the betrayal still stinging, but I could see genuine remorse in Sarah's eyes. And more importantly, I could see the beginning of real understanding about what she'd done wrong. "I think forgiveness is possible," I said finally, "but it's going to require more than apologies and promises. It's going to require you proving over time that you've actually changed. How long, however long it takes. The public unraveling." Sarah's confession. Word travels fast in a small community, especially when it involves family drama and public lies being exposed. By the following Monday, the fallout from Sarah's deceptions had spread far beyond our immediate family circle. The first sign of how widespread the damage came when I arrived at church that Sunday. I'd been attending the same Methodist church for 25 years, and while I wasn't particularly social, I knew most of the congregation by name. As I walked into the sanctuary, I noticed an unusual number of people turning to look at me, their expressions ranging from sympathetic to curious to concerned. During the coffee hour after service, I was approached by at least a dozen people who wanted to check on my well-being. Margaret Foster, the church secretary, was the most direct. "Bella, dear, we've all been so worried about you. Some of us have been hearing troubling things about your health, but you seem perfectly fine to me." "What kind of troubling things?" I asked, my voice calm but my mind racing. "Well, Sarah mentioned to several people that you'd been having some memory difficulties and confusion. She made it sound quite serious, actually. But talking to you now, I can't see any sign of the problem she described." I spent the next hour having variations of the same conversation with different church members. Each one had heard some version of Sarah's lies about my cognitive decline, and each one was clearly confused by the disconnect between what they'd been told and what they were observing. By the time I left church, it was clear that Sarah's damage control efforts were going to be more complicated than either of us had anticipated. She hadn't just told a few close friends about my supposed problems. She'd spread the lies throughout our entire community. The gravity of Sarah's deception was becoming terrifyingly clear, not just to her, but to me. Monday morning brought a call from Dr. Peterson, my longtime physician. "Bella, I'm calling because I've had several people express concern about your mental health recently. I wanted to check in and see how you're doing." "What kind of concerns?" "People suggesting you might be experiencing memory loss or confusion." I have to say, I was surprised to hear these reports because I see no evidence of cognitive decline in our appointments. "That's because there is no cognitive decline, Dr. Peterson. These reports are based on false information my daughter has been spreading." There was a pause. False information. I explained the situation to Dr. Peterson, who listened with growing concern. Bella, I need you to understand how serious this is. False reports about an elderly person's mental capacity can have significant consequences. They can affect your independence, your financial autonomy, even your legal rights. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? If enough people believe you're experiencing cognitive decline, they might question your ability to make decisions about your own care, your finances, your living situation. In extreme cases, it could even lead to guardianship proceedings. The blood drained from my face. I hadn't considered the legal implications of Sarah's lies. Is there anything I can do to protect myself? I'm going to document this conversation in your medical file, along with my professional assessment that you show no signs of cognitive impairment. I'd also recommend you consider speaking with a lawyer about the potential legal ramifications of what your daughter has done. After hanging up with Dr. Peterson, I sat in my kitchen, feeling shaken. The scope of Sarah's deception was beginning to feel overwhelming. She hadn't just hurt my feelings or damaged our relationship. She'd potentially put my independence at risk. My phone rang. It was Emma. Grandma, I need to tell you something. Mom called me last night and asked me to delete my Instagram post. The one about family traditions. Yeah. She said it was causing problems and making her look bad. When I refused, Mom threatened to cut off my car insurance and cell phone. And what did you say? I told her that maybe if she hadn't lied to her own grandmother, there wouldn't be anything embarrassing to post about. I felt a surge of pride in my granddaughter's moral courage. Honestly, I'm angry. I've been thinking about all the times over the years when you seemed sad or left out, and now I understand why. Mom has been systematically excluding you and lying about it. Emma, I don't want you to. No, Grandma, let me finish. I'm 17 years old, not 7. I can see what's been happening, and so can Jake. We've been talking about it, and we think Mom owes you more than just an apology. What do you mean? We think she should make a public statement setting the record straight. Not just to a few friends, but to everyone she's lied to. That's a big ask, sweetheart. She made a big mess. It should require a big cleanup. The path to true amends was becoming clearer, but it would require a level of honesty and humility from Sarah that she had rarely shown. The pressure was building, not just from me, but from the very community Sarah had tried to manipulate. And soon, the final, undeniable proof of her deception would emerge from an unexpected source. The final layers, unmasking the deception. Tuesday brought another uncomfortable revelation. I was at the grocery store when I ran into Helen Morrison, Vivian's sister-in-law. Helen was clearly uncomfortable when she saw me, but she approached anyway. Bella, I hope you don't mind me saying, but I think you should know what Vivian has been telling people about that vacation situation. What has she been saying? I asked, my heart bracing for more. She's been very clear that she was deceived about the nature of the trip and that she never would have agreed to go if she'd known she was taking your place. Helen said, her voice filled with quiet indignation. She's quite upset about being used that way. I appreciate her honesty, I replied, a sense of grim satisfaction settling in. There's more, Helen continued. She's been telling people that Sarah has been making subtle comments about your mental state for months. Things that Vivian now realizes were designed to make her feel like she was the more appropriate choice for family activities. Such as comments about your confusion about social situations, your difficulty adapting to new environments, your preference for staying home rather than traveling. Vivian, apparently, had shared that Sarah painted a picture of me as someone who was becoming increasingly unable to handle complex social or travel situations. Each revelation was another layer of manipulation that Sarah had employed. She hadn't just lied about specific incidents. She'd created an entire false narrative about my capabilities and preferences. Helen, how long has this been going on? According to Vivian, at least 2 years, maybe longer, she replied. Sarah has been very subtle about it, always framing her comments as concern for your well-being rather than criticism. But the cumulative effect was to make Vivian believe that including you in activities would be difficult for everyone involved. And Vivian believed it. Why wouldn't she? Sarah is your daughter. Vivian assumed she would know best about your capabilities and preferences. The harsh truth, a therapist's perspective. Wednesday brought the conversation I'd been dreading, but also, strangely, expecting. Sarah called to tell me she'd been speaking with a therapist about her behavior. She helped me understand that what I've been doing is called parentification in reverse. Sarah said, her voice sounding small, almost unfamiliar. Instead of treating you like a parent, I've been treating you like a child who needs to have decisions made for her. Go on, I prompted, my heart a mix of sorrow and a cautious glimmer of hope. She also said that spreading false information about your mental state could be considered a form of elder abuse, even if that wasn't my intention. Dr. Peterson mentioned something similar, I stated, the words chillingly clear. You spoke to Dr. Peterson about this. She gasped, genuine shock in her voice. He called me because people in the community have been expressing concern about my mental health based on the lies you've been telling, I explained. He wanted to check on me and make sure there weren't actual problems he'd missed. Oh God, I never thought. I never considered that other people might take my concerns to your doctor, Sarah. That's exactly the kind of consequence you should have considered before you started spreading false information about my mental state. I know, she whispered. The therapist helped me see how my lies could have affected your independence, your reputation, even your legal rights. And how do you plan to fix it? I'm going to write a letter to everyone I can think of who I've spoken to about your supposed cognitive problems, she confessed, her voice gaining a flicker of resolve. I'm going to explain that I exaggerated my concerns due to my own issues and that you have no mental health problems whatsoever. That's a start. And I'm going to post something on social media setting the record straight there too. What will you say? The truth. That I've been excluding you from family activities based on my own social anxieties, not because of any limitations on your part. That I created false narratives about your mental state to justify that exclusion. And that I'm deeply sorry for the harm I've caused to your reputation and our relationship. It was more than I'd expected her to offer, a huge step, but I remained cautious. Sarah, actions speak louder than words. I'll believe you've changed when I see consistent changes in how you treat me. I understand, she replied, her voice firming. And Mom, there's something else. Something I need to tell you about the vacation. What about it? The cabin we rented. It actually has 3 bedrooms, not 2 like I told you. I lied about the space available so I'd have an excuse for why you couldn't come. I know Vivian told me. You know, I know about all of it, Sarah. The lies to me, the lies to Daniel, the lies to Vivian, the false stories about my mental state. I know about the whole web of deception you created. How do you know all that? She asked, genuine bewilderment in her voice. Because I investigated. When someone lies to me as blatantly as you did, I don't just accept it and move on. I dig until I find the truth. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Mom, how long have you known? I've known since the day after you left for the mountains. The question is, how long would you have kept lying if you hadn't been caught? Another silence. I don't know, she said finally, her voice raw. I honestly don't know. That's what scares me most about this whole situation, Sarah. Not that you lied, but that you seem to have lost the ability to distinguish between truth and fiction when it comes to managing people's perceptions of your actions. I think I've been lying so much that I started to believe my own lies. Then it's time to relearn the difference. The journey to true atonement was still long, but Sarah's willingness to face the truth, however painful, was a crucial step towards rebuilding. The stage was set for her public confession. The ultimate test of Sarah's sincerity was about to be put to the public. Her confession, broadcast for all to see, would be the true measure of her willingness to mend what she had broken. The public confession, a humbling moment. Sarah's public confession came on a Friday morning, posted simultaneously to her Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn accounts. I learned about it when Emma called me, her voice mixing excitement with disbelief. Grandma, you need to see what Mom just posted. She actually did it. She told everyone the truth. I opened my laptop and navigated to Sarah's Facebook page. The post was lengthy, detailed, and surprisingly honest. It read, I need to make a public apology and correction. Over the past 2 years, I have made statements to many people suggesting that my mother, Bella Kaitan, was experiencing memory problems and cognitive decline. I have used these false claims to justify excluding her from family activities and social gatherings. I have also misrepresented situations to make it appear that my mother's exclusion was her choice or in her best interest. None of this was true. My mother has no cognitive problems whatsoever. She is sharp, capable, and fully able to participate in any activity I might have excluded her from. I created these false narratives because of my own social anxieties and misguided attempts to manage family dynamics. I am deeply ashamed of my behavior and the harm I have caused to my mother's reputation in our community. I have damaged relationships and spread false information that could have had serious consequences for her independence and well-being. I am committed to making amends and rebuilding the trust I have destroyed. I ask for your patience as I work to correct the damage I have done, and I ask for your understanding as my mother, and I work to repair our relationship. To my mother, I am sorry. You deserved better from me, and I promise to do better going forward. The post had been up for less than 3 hours and already had dozens of comments. Most were supportive of me and critical of Sarah's behavior, but a few expressed understanding for the pressure she'd been under. Reading through them, I felt a mixture of vindication and sadness. Vindication because the truth was finally public and my reputation was being restored. Sadness because the whole situation had required such dramatic measures to resolve. My phone rang. It was Catherine. Bella, have you seen Sarah's post? Just finished reading it. Well, it's certainly causing a stir. My phone hasn't stopped ringing with people wanting to discuss it. What are they saying? Mixed reactions. Some people are shocked by the extent of Sarah's deception. Others are sympathetic to the pressures she was feeling, but everyone seems to agree that what she did was wrong and that you deserved better. Any negative reactions? A few people are questioning why you didn't address the false rumors earlier. but most understand that it's difficult to defend against lies being told by your own daughter. The unexpected alliance. A new friendship blooms. That afternoon, I received a call from an unexpected source. Vivian Morrison. Bella, I hope you don't mind me calling. I saw Sarah's post and I wanted to speak with you. Of course, Vivian. How are you doing? I'm still processing everything. To be honest, I feel like such a fool for believing Sarah's manipulations. You're not a fool, I reassured her. She was very convincing, and you had no reason to suspect she was lying about her own mother. That's kind of you to say, but I should have questioned some of the things she told me. Looking back, there were inconsistencies in her stories about you that I ignored because I wanted to believe I was helping. What do you mean? Sarah would describe you as confused and forgetful, but then she'd mention conversations you'd had that demonstrated clear thinking and good memory. She'd say you preferred staying home, but then she'd mention how active you were with church and community activities. The pieces didn't fit together, but I didn't want to seem nosy by asking too many questions. Vivian, I want you to know that I don't hold any of this against you. You were manipulated just as much as I was. Thank you for saying that. But Bella, I need to ask you something. Do you think there's any way we could be friends? Real friends, not the artificial relationship Sarah tried to create between us. The question surprised me. I'd liked Vivian well enough, but I hadn't considered a friendship. I'd like that, I said, cautiously hopeful. But it might be complicated given the family dynamics. Actually, I think it might help the family dynamics. If you and I have our own relationship, independent of Sarah's manipulations, it might prevent future attempts to pit us against each other. It was an insightful observation. You're probably right. Would you like to have lunch next week? Just the two of us. No family agenda. I'd enjoy that very much. The damage was exposed, but new connections were already beginning to form, laying the groundwork for a different kind of family dynamic. The path forward, small steps of trust. Saturday brought another unexpected development. Daniel called to invite me to Emma's upcoming school play, an invitation that came directly from him, not filtered through Sarah. I realized that Sarah has been controlling most of the communication between you and our family, he said. That's going to change. From now on, you'll get invitations and information directly from me or the kids. I appreciate that, Daniel. I also want you to know that I've been thinking about my own role in this situation. I allowed Sarah to control the narrative about your capabilities without ever spending enough time with you to form my own opinion. That was wrong of me. We all make mistakes. This was more than a mistake. I essentially allowed my wife to isolate you from your own family based on information I never verified. That's not the kind of man I want to be. Sunday's church service provided another test of how well Sarah's public confession was being received. I arrived to find several people waiting to speak with me, all expressing relief that the truth had come out and support for my decision to address the lies publicly. Pastor Williams pulled me aside after the service. Bella, I want you to know that several church members have come to me over the past few months, expressing concern about the reports they'd heard regarding your mental health. I'm relieved to learn that those concerns were unfounded. Thank you, Pastor. I hope this situation can serve as a reminder to everyone about the importance of not accepting second-hand reports about people's well-being without verification. Indeed, he agreed solemnly. It's also a reminder about the damage that can be done when we make assumptions about elderly members of our community based on stereotypes rather than actual observation. The journey was far from over, but the foundations for rebuilding trust, layer by painful layer, were finally being laid. And soon, Sarah would take another critical step towards her own redemption. The truth was out, the apologies were being made, and the community was aware. But the real test would be in Sarah's consistent actions and whether she could truly embody the change she promised. Rebuilding bridges, the first actions. That afternoon, Sarah called. "Mom," her voice was softer now, a hint of humility in it. "I wanted to let you know that I've heard from several people about my post. Most of the responses have been supportive of you and critical of me, which is what I expected and deserved. How are you handling that?" I asked, curious about her internal process. "It's humbling and embarrassing," she admitted, "but it's also a relief to have the truth out there. I feel like I've been carrying around this weight of lies for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to be honest." "Sarah, I saw your post, and I appreciate the public apology," I said, acknowledging her effort. "But I need you to understand that this is just the beginning. Rebuilding trust is going to take time and consistent action." "I know, and I'm prepared for that," she replied, her voice gaining a little more conviction. "Actually, I wanted to ask you something. Emma's play is next Friday night. I know Daniel already invited you, but I wanted to personally invite you to sit with our family. Not in the back or off to the side, but with us." It was a small gesture, but symbolically significant. A direct invitation from her to be included, not just tolerated. "I'd like that," I said, genuinely pleased. "There's something else," she continued. "After the play, we usually go out for ice cream with Emma to celebrate. I'd like you to come with us, as part of the family, not as an afterthought." "Are you sure you're comfortable with that, Mom?" I asked, a hint of a challenge in my tone. "Mom, I'm going to have to get comfortable with treating you like a valued member of this family instead of an obligation to be managed, starting now." For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt a glimmer of genuine hope that Sarah might actually change. Unexpected allies. Vivian's redemption. 3 weeks after Sarah's public confession, I found myself sitting in my kitchen with an unexpected guest. Vivian Morrison. We'd begun meeting for lunch every Tuesday, and what had started as awkward conversations between two women who barely knew each other was developing into a genuine friendship. "You know what's funny?" Vivian said, sipping her tea, a soft smile on her face. "Now that I'm getting to know the real you instead of Sarah's version of you, I'm wondering how I ever believed her descriptions." "What do you mean?" I asked, intrigued. "She painted you as someone who is becoming increasingly withdrawn and confused, someone who preferred the safety of familiar routines to the excitement of new experiences. But you're one of the most intellectually curious people I've met." It was true. Over the past few weeks, Vivian and I had discovered we shared interests in history, literature, and current events. Our conversations were stimulating in a way I hadn't experienced in years. "I think Sarah saw what she wanted to see," I reflected. "Or rather, she created the version of me that justified her actions. It's more than that, though. I think she genuinely convinced herself that her false narratives were true," Vivian mused. "When she talked about your supposed limitations, she seemed to believe them. That's what makes the whole situation so disturbing. She wasn't just lying to others, she was lying to herself." My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Grandma, can you help me with my college application essay? Mom suggested I ask you because you're such a good writer." It was a small thing, but significant. Sarah was beginning to acknowledge my capabilities instead of inventing limitations. "Good news," Vivian asked, noticing my smile. "Emma wants help with her college essay." Sarah suggested she ask me. "That's progress." "Small steps," Vivian agreed. The doorbell rang, interrupting our conversation. Through the window, I saw Sarah standing on my porch with what appeared to be a large photo album in her hands. "That's my cue to leave," Vivian said, standing. "Same time next week. I'll look forward to it." After Vivian left, I opened the door to find Sarah looking nervous but determined. "Hi, Mom. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Just having tea with Vivian." Sarah's eyebrows rose slightly. "You and Vivian are having tea together. We're becoming friends. Is that a problem?" "No, it's actually wonderful. I'm glad something good came out of this mess." We settled in the living room, the same space where we'd had our confrontation 3 weeks earlier, but the atmosphere was different now. Less charged, more cautious. The first glimmers of true remorse, old photos, new understanding. "I brought something I thought you might like to see," Sarah said, placing the photo album on the coffee table between us. "I've been going through old pictures, and I realized I'd forgotten so many good memories we shared." I opened the album to find photos spanning my entire relationship with Sarah, from her birth to recent family gatherings. But these weren't the typical milestone photos that most families preserved. These were candid moments. Sarah and me baking cookies when she was 6, working in the garden when she was 12, laughing together at Emma's first birthday party. "I'd forgotten about this one," I said, pointing to a picture of Sarah and me at her high school graduation. We were both beaming, my arm around her shoulders as she held her diploma. "I remember you telling me that day that you were proud of the young woman I'd become," Sarah said quietly. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately, about how proud you were of me, and how I repaid that pride by becoming someone you couldn't be proud of." "Sarah, I'm still proud of you," I said softly. "I'm proud that you're facing the truth about what you did and working to make it right." "Are you really? Or are you just saying that because you think it's what I need to hear?" I considered the question carefully. "I'm proud of the effort you're making now. I'm proud that you had the courage to make a public confession and apologize. But I'm still hurt by what you did, and I'm still waiting to see if the changes are genuine and lasting." She nodded. "That's fair, more than fair." We spent the next hour going through the album, remembering better times and talking about what had gone wrong between us. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt like I was talking to my daughter. Not the manipulative woman she'd become, but the child I'd raised with love and hope. "Mom, can I ask you something?" Sarah said as we neared the end of the album. "When did you first realize I was lying to you?" "Not just about the vacation, but about everything. I think part of me knew for years that something wasn't right. You'd become so distant, so evasive. But I kept making excuses for your behavior because I didn't want to believe my daughter was deliberately deceiving me." "What finally convinced you?" "The phone call about the vacation. The story was too elaborate, too convenient, and your voice. You sounded like you were reading from a script rather than talking to your mother." I probably was, in a way. I'd been rehearsing explanations for so long that lying had become more natural than telling the truth. The journey was long, but each step, each painful truth, was slowly, meticulously, paving the way for a genuine reconciliation. The pieces of our fractured relationship were slowly, painstakingly, being put back together. The final tests of trust and the sweet taste of a truly new beginning were just around the corner. The new normal. A Mother's Triumph. That evening, Emma stopped by to work on her college essay. As we sat at my kitchen table, she told me about the changes she'd been observing in her family. "Mom's been different since the whole vacation thing came out," Emma said. "She's more present, I guess. Less worried about managing everyone's perceptions and more focused on actually connecting with people." "How do you feel about everything that's happened?" I asked, looking at her. "Honestly, I'm relieved. I've been watching Mom treat you badly for years, and I never understood why. Now that the truth is out, maybe we can actually be a normal family." "What does a normal family look like to you?" I asked, smiling. "One where people tell the truth to each other. Where grandma gets invited to things because she's grandma, not because she might be useful or convenient. Where Mom doesn't have to pretend to be someone she's not." Out of the mouths of babes, right? The following Sunday, I attended Emma's school play, a production of our town in which she played Emily Webb. As promised, Sarah had saved me a seat with the family, not hidden in the back or off to the side, but right there with us. Daniel was on my left, Sarah on my right, and Jake beside her. During intermission, several other parents approached our group to chat. I watched Sarah carefully, looking for signs that she was embarrassed by my presence or trying to manage the interaction. Instead, she introduced me naturally as my mother, Bella, and included me in the conversations without any apparent discomfort. After the play, we went to Mel's Ice Cream Parlor, a local institution that had been serving families for 3 generations. As we sat around a large table, sharing sundaes and talking about Emma's performance, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The simple pleasure of being included as a natural part of my family. "Grandma," Jake said suddenly, "are you and Mom okay now?" "Like really okay." Sarah and I looked at each other across the table. "We're working on it," I said carefully. "These things take time. But you're not mad at each other anymore." "I'm not mad," I said, "but trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild." Sarah nodded. "Your grandmother is being very patient with me while I prove that I've really changed." "How will you prove it?" Emma asked, curious. "By treating her with the respect and inclusion she's always deserved," Sarah said. "By making decisions based on honesty instead of managing perceptions. By remembering that she's my mother, not a problem to be solved." It was the right answer, but answers are easy. I was waiting to see if her actions would match her words. 6 months after the mountain vacation that changed everything, I found myself sitting in an airplane for the first time in 5 years. Sarah was beside me, both of us looking out the window as we descended toward Denver International Airport. "Are you nervous?" she asked. "A little excited, a little nervous," I admitted. "It's been a long time since I've traveled anywhere." "We can take things as slowly as you want," she reassured me. "No pressure to keep up with an itinerary or pretend to enjoy something you don't." This trip, a long weekend in Colorado to visit the Rocky Mountain National Park, was Sarah's idea. Not a guilt-motivated gesture or an obligation reluctantly fulfilled, but a genuine invitation extended because she wanted to spend time with me. The invitation had come 3 weeks earlier during one of our now regular Tuesday lunch meetings. Sarah had been telling me about a travel article she'd read when she suddenly stopped mid-sentence. "Mom, would you like to go to Colorado with me? Not for any special occasion, just because I think you'd enjoy the mountains, and I'd enjoy experiencing them with you." I'd been cautious. What about Daniel and the kids? This would be just us. A mother-daughter trip, the kind we talked about having years ago. "What changed your mind?" I realized that I've been so focused on proving I've changed that I forgot to actually enjoy having a relationship with you, she confessed. I want to take a trip with you because I genuinely want to spend time with you, not because I'm trying to make amends. The honesty of her answer had convinced me to say yes. Now, as we collected our luggage and headed to the rental car counter, I marveled at how different this felt from what I'd imagined our original vacation would have been like. There was no tension, no sense that Sarah was enduring my presence for the sake of family obligation. She seemed genuinely happy to be here with me. Our hotel in Estes Park was charming, a small lodge with mountain views and a cozy fireplace in the lobby. Sarah had booked us separate rooms, but adjoining ones, giving us both privacy and proximity. "What would you like to do first?" she asked as we settled into the lobby with cups of hot chocolate. "I'd like to hear about what you've learned in therapy," I said. "You mentioned it's been helpful, but we've never really talked about what you're working on." Sarah was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. The therapist helped me understand that I've been living with this constant fear of not being good enough, not sophisticated enough, not successful enough, not worthy of the life I'd built. And you dealt with that fear by trying to erase reminders of your background. I asked gently. Exactly. Instead of dealing with my insecurities, I decided the problem was with the reminders themselves. You became a symbol of everything I was trying to distance myself from. That must have been exhausting. It was. Living in constant fear of being found out as someone who didn't really belong. Creating elaborate stories to manage people's perceptions. Always being on guard against saying or doing anything that might reveal my true background. And now I'm learning to be comfortable with who I am and where I came from. To see my background as something that shaped me in positive ways, rather than something to be ashamed of. What does that look like practically? It means I don't panic when you tell stories about my childhood in front of my friends. It means I can acknowledge that I grew up in a modest home with parents who worked hard to give me opportunities. It means I stop seeing you as evidence of my inadequacy and start seeing you as evidence of love and sacrifice. We spent that evening walking around the charming mountain town, talking more honestly than we had in years. Sarah told me about the social pressures she'd felt in her professional circles, the way she'd convinced herself that appearances mattered more than authenticity. I told her about the loneliness I'd experienced over the past few years, the gradual realization that my own daughter was embarrassed by me. The hardest part, I admitted as we sat on a bench overlooking a moonlit lake, wasn't the exclusion itself. It was feeling like I'd failed as a mother, like I'd somehow raised a daughter who could treat me so callously. "You didn't fail as a mother," Sarah said firmly, taking my hand. "I failed as a daughter. You raised me with values of honesty and kindness, and I chose to abandon those values in pursuit of social acceptance. But I keep wondering what I could have done differently. Were there signs I missed? Should I have called you out earlier when the lies started? Maybe. But Mom, I was an adult making adult choices. You couldn't have prevented me from becoming someone you didn't recognize." The next morning, we hiked one of the easier trails in Rocky Mountain National Park. The scenery was breathtaking. Snow-capped peaks, alpine meadows, crystalline lakes that reflected the sky like mirrors. But more than the natural beauty, I was struck by how comfortable Sarah seemed with just being present with me. "You know," she said as we stopped to rest beside a mountain stream, "this is what I pictured when I first suggested we take a trip together. Just the two of us, no agenda except enjoying each other's company. What happened to that picture? I let my anxieties and insecurities take over. I started overthinking everything. What we'd talk about, whether you'd embarrass me somehow, whether other people would judge me for the kind of mother I had. And now I realize that having a mother who raised me with love and worked multiple jobs to give me opportunities isn't something to be embarrassed about. It's something to be proud of. That afternoon, we visited a local art gallery where Sarah surprised me by purchasing a small landscape painting that reminded her of our hike. "I want to hang this in my office," she explained, "to remind me of this trip and what it represents." "What does it represent?" I asked. "A new beginning. A relationship based on honesty instead of managing perceptions. Time spent together because we want to be together, not because family obligation requires it." On our last evening, we had dinner at a restaurant with panoramic mountain views. As we lingered over dessert and coffee, Sarah pulled out an envelope. "I have something for you," she said. "Something I should have given you months ago." Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter, several pages long. The first lines read, "Dear Mom, I want to thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. I want to thank you for fighting for our relationship when I was too cowardly to fight for it myself. Most of all, I want to thank you for teaching me, through your response to my betrayal, that love doesn't mean accepting unacceptable behavior." I read the entire letter while Sarah sat quietly across from me. It was the most honest, heartfelt communication she'd ever written to me. A full accounting of her mistakes, a genuine expression of gratitude for my patience, and a commitment to building something better between us. "Sarah," I said when I finished reading, "this is beautiful, but you don't have to keep apologizing. What matters now is that we're here together, building something new. I know, but I needed to say it all. To put it in writing so you'd know that I understand the magnitude of what I almost lost." And what was that? The relationship with the woman who loved me enough to call me out when I was wrong. The woman who fought for her dignity when I tried to take it away. The woman who raised me to be better than I was choosing to be. As we flew home the next day, I reflected on how much had changed since that devastating phone call about the canceled vacation. Sarah's betrayal had forced both of us to confront uncomfortable truths. Her about the person she'd become, me about the enabling I'd been doing by accepting unacceptable treatment. The revenge I'd planned and executed hadn't been about punishment for its own sake. It had been about forcing accountability, demanding truth, and refusing to accept being dismissed and diminished by my own child. I remembered sitting in my kitchen that first morning after discovering Sarah's lies, feeling the weight of decades of taking whatever scraps of attention and respect she chose to give me. I'd had a choice in that moment: to accept her explanation and fade quietly into the background of her life, or to fight for my dignity and demand better. I'd chosen to fight, and that choice had saved our relationship. "Mom," Sarah said as we waited for our luggage at the airport, "I know I've said this before, but I need to say it again. Thank you for not letting me get away with treating you badly. Thank you for demanding better." "You don't have to thank me for that, sweetheart," I said, a genuine smile forming. "That's what people do when they love someone. They hold them accountable for their actions. Not everyone would have fought as hard as you did. A lot of people would have just accepted the situation and faded into the background. I'm not a background kind of woman," I said, laughing softly. Sarah laughed too. "No, you're definitely not, and I'm grateful for that." As we drove home from the airport, I thought about the lessons this entire experience had taught me. That love without respect is just another form of suffering. That enabling bad behavior isn't kindness. It's cruelty to everyone involved. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept unacceptable treatment. Most importantly, I'd learned that it's never too late to demand better. At 70 years old, I'd fought for my dignity and won. I'd rebuilt a relationship that seemed beyond repair. I'd proven to myself and everyone else that age doesn't make you powerless. Wisdom and determination do. The house felt different when we walked through the door. Not just because Sarah was with me, but because I was different. I was no longer the woman who accepted whatever treatment her daughter chose to give her. I was Bella Kaitan, a woman who knew her worth and demanded that others recognize it too. That evening, as Sarah helped me unpack and we looked through the photos from our trip, my phone rang. It was Emma. "Grandma, how was Colorado? Did you and Mom have a good time?" "We had a wonderful time, sweetheart. Your mother and I are learning to enjoy each other's company again." "I'm so happy to hear that. You know, some of my friends have been telling me how cool it is that you stood up for yourself and made Mom face the truth about how she was treating you." "It wasn't about being cool, Emma. It was about refusing to be treated poorly by someone I love." "Well, I think you're a badass." She giggled. I laughed. "Thank you, dear. That's the nicest compliment I've received in years." After Emma hung up, Sarah and I sat in my living room with cups of tea, planning our next adventure. Not because we felt obligated to spend time together, but because we genuinely enjoyed each other's company. "Where should we go next?" Sarah asked, scrolling through travel websites on her phone. "Surprise me," I said. "I trust your judgment." It was the first time in years I'd said those words to her and truly meant them. As I got ready for bed that night, I looked at myself in the mirror and smiled. The woman looking back at me was 70 years old, with gray hair and laugh lines, and the kind of confidence that can only come from surviving betrayal and emerging stronger. I'd started this journey as a mother whose daughter was ashamed of her. I was ending it as a woman whose daughter was proud to call her mom. The revenge I'd planned had worked better than I'd ever imagined. Not because it had punished Sarah, but because it had saved us both. Thank you for joining me on this journey through her true stories. If you believe that truth matters, that dignity is worth fighting for, and that it's never too late to demand better treatment from the people in your life, please hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us continue sharing stories of women who refuse to be taken advantage of, who stand up for themselves, and who prove that courage has no expiration date. Remember, you are never too old to fight for your dignity, never too powerless to demand respect, and never too late to rewrite the story of how others are allowed to treat you. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept unacceptable behavior. Until next time, keep standing tall and demanding the respect you deserve.